Hey everybody, today on Northern Revolutions, I'm going to give my thoughts on originals, reissues, and remasters. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome back to Northern Revolutions. My name's Rob. Welcome if you're new, welcome back if you're returning. Today I want to talk about originals, reissues, and remasters. Something I think about a lot when I'm buying records, and maybe you do too. Before I delve into that though, if you could give me a like, maybe a subscribe, hit that bell notification icon, that would be greatly appreciated. Your support certainly helps my channel. I appreciate it. So what's the difference between an original and a reissue and a remaster? Well, an original, obviously, is an original pressing of a record. I think for the point of this discussion, I'm going to talk about an original in terms of a copy of the album that came out in the era that the album was released. Doesn't necessarily have to be a first pressing. I'll give you an example. I mentioned when I did the deep dive on my Beatles catalog, Please Please Me, their first album, was originally pressed in February of '63. There was a second pressing in around March or April, I believe, of '63. There was a third pressing in May of '63, and then another one later on in '63. I'm going to consider those all original pressings because they came out in the era of the release of that record. Not all first pressings, obviously, but I think for the purpose of our discussion, I'll call them originals. Then there's the topic of reissues. Now, obviously, a reissue is anything that has been released subsequent to, the original release of the album. That could be anywhere from, a couple years later to a couple decades later. Let me give you an example. This is an original 1997 pressing of Oasis' Be Here Now, which is their third album. And this is the 2016 reissue. Aside from the black border around the cover, they look identical. The 2016's been remastered, but other than that, these are both the same. Let's talk about remasters for a minute. Remasters are a kind of reissue. What a remaster is where the record company has wanted to put out a release that they felt had superior audio quality. So that means a recording engineer and a producer or whomever would go back to the original source tapes or the original digital files if it was a digital recording, and they try to improve the sound quality. Older tapes, they would try and reduce, tape noise and any other imperfections, restore the tape if the tape needed restoration because of its age. And then they would do things to try and improve the sound quality, whether it's, give it more bass or, just change the balance a little bit, try to give you a clearer sound. I won't get into the debate about whether that is a good thing or not. It really depends on each individual release. There's so many factors that go into what makes a good remaster and what doesn't make a good remaster, and whether a remaster sounds better than an original or not. So a remaster is a reissue that has improved sound quality or perceived improved sound quality. The other thing that we should talk about when we're talking about reissues is, in most cases, you'll see the buzzword that it's pressed on 180 gram vinyl or heavyweight vinyl. That's kind of a sort of 2000 onward sort of innovation. Reissues of 60s albums that were done in the 70s and 80s. There was no such thing as heavyweight vinyl. I'll call it a modern era innovation. Does 180 gram mean that the sound quality is better? We're conditioned to think so, but that's not necessarily true. Just because the vinyl is heavier doesn't mean your sound quality is better. What it does mean is that, there's a little more weight to the record. It's a little more durable. It will track a little bit better on the turntable. If there are any imperfections in the vinyl, it'll track a little bit nicer. But what really makes the quality of the audio is the depth of the grooves, and that's determined by the recording or the cutting engineer. Is not really a function of the thickness of the vinyl. And the other big factor is the source tapes, or the source that the lacquers and stampers were made from. If they're not good quality master tapes, you're not going to get a good quality remaster. So just because it's 180 gram vinyl doesn't necessarily mean that the sound quality is better. There are some originals out there that are better than the 180 gram reissues. So what's my philosophy when it comes to record collecting in terms of originals versus reissues and remasters? Well, I tend to like original pressings. I like original pressings for a couple reasons. I don't collect them for monetary value. I mean, it's nice that I have some records that are expensive, but that's not why I collect them. I like them for what I'm going to call sentimental collectability. I like that I have, for example, first pressings of every Canadian Beatles album. I like that first pressings are the product that was released to the world when that album came out. It's unaltered. It hasn't been tampered with. The audio hasn't been changed from what the artist originally intended. The packaging is still the same. It is the item that came out back in the day. My first copy of the White Album was one that my dad bought at Sam the Record Man in downtown Toronto the day that it came out, and I still have it. And I like the fact that, that's such a landmark album, and the one that I have was the one that hit store shelves back in 1968. So to me, there's something to be said for that first pressing sentimental collectability. Does that mean I don't have reissues and remasters? Sure I do. I have a lot of new vinyl. Some of my new vinyl are releases that were never previously available on vinyl. But of the reissues and remasters that I have them for a reason. And I'll go through why I personally would buy a reissue or a remaster. The first one is if it's a record that I can't find, like it's impossible to find, or it's incredibly expensive. I'll give you a good example. This is Rodriguez Coming from Reality. If you haven't seen the movie Searching for Sugar Man, go watch that movie and you'll understand why Rodriguez is important. I'm lucky enough to have an original South African first pressing of Cold Fact, which I'm quite proud of. I would love to find a first pressing of Coming from Reality, but like Cold Fact, first pressings are incredibly hard to find. So I'm going to settle for this reissue from a few years ago when the film came out. If I ever do stumble across an original, that's great. Another example of one where I have a reissue because I can't find an original. The Bangles, Sweethearts of the Sun. This was their last album from 2012-ish. Was released on vinyl back in the day when it came out, but incredibly limited. I've only ever seen one copy for sale on eBay, and it was beyond my price range. They reissued this on Record Store Day, I believe last year, and it's like a marble vinyl or some kind of splatter vinyl. I have this reissue because I can't find an original and I can't afford an original. Another prime example, U2's Best of 1980 to 1990. This is the only U2 album that I don't have a first pressing of. And these are probably, $300, and I can't justify paying $300. So this is the this is the remaster reissue from, I think it's 2016, something like that. The second reason that I would buy a reissue or a remaster is it's not necessarily about audio quality. I am not an audiophile by any means. I do not have an incredibly expensive stereo system, and even if I did, I'm not sure that my ears are good enough to detect all the subtle nuances which differs one pressing from another. I just want it to play nice and sound nice. So I don't buy a remaster just because I have to have the best sound quality. And as I mentioned, just because it's remastered, it's not necessarily an assurance that it's going to be a better mix. One of the reasons I would buy a reissue or a remaster is if that offering has something extra in it. Quite often when labels will do a remastered anniversary edition, for example, of something, they'll put some extra material in there. Here's an example of that. This is Bryan Adams' Reckless. I think this is like the 30th anniversary edition. But what I like about this is that there is an extra disc, and in that second disc, there are 6 songs that were from the original Reckless sessions but didn't make the album, and then there are 3 songs that were from the Live at Hammersmith show in 85. So, I mean, this is an incredible album. This is Run to You Heaven, Somebody, Summer of 69, like it goes on and on. I have an original of this, but I bought this remastered anniversary edition because it had some extra stuff that wasn't available anywhere else. Another example of that is the Beatles Live at the Hollywood Bowl reissue. This is a fair amount different than the 70s original issue. I bought this for 2 reasons. Number one, this one does have better audio quality. They got rid of a lot of the background screaming noises from the crowd. But also, there's 4 songs on here that were not on the initial release. So this has some extra stuff in it, aside from the fact that I'm a crazy Beatles fan. Because it has extra stuff, this is why I bought this reissue. So I would buy a reissue if I can't afford or find an original, or if it has extra stuff in it. The third reason that I would buy a reissue or a remaster is if it's a band that I really loved and there was something dramatically different about the release, even if the track listing's the same. Here's an example. I love Blue Rodeo. I mentioned before, they're a band up where I live. This is their second album, Diamond Mine. This is what the original release looked like from 1989 when it came out. Just a single disc, nothing fancy. About 5 years ago on Record Store Day, they issued this. Different looking version of the album. It's a double LP. The track listing's the same. It is remastered. It's on red and blue vinyl. It is considerably different than this one in terms of the packaging and the overall presentation, even though the music is the same. There have been some reissues or remasters that I've thought about buying, and I didn't. I'll give you an example. Over the last 3 years or so, the band has put out some reissues to commemorate the anniversary of some of their albums. Music for Big Pink, their self-titled album, and Cahoots. Cahoots just came out within the last couple months. I think their 50th anniversary editions. I have originals. There's my original first pressing of Big Pink. There's my original first pressing of Cahoots. Both of these are in good shape. They play very nicely. The records are fine. There's no surface noise. And I thought about buying the reissues, and then I thought, why would I do that? I'm happy with the sound quality on these. Again, Are my ears good enough to detect a lot of the differences that might be present in a remaster? Likely not, or at least not enough to justify spending, $40 on something that sounds almost the same as what I have. The release is not that much different, and there's no extra stuff in it. So I passed on them, and I'll stick with my originals. Another example, Fleetwood Mac's Rumors. I love it. I've got my original pressing. There are reissues out there. The Palace pressing is the one that everyone says has great sound quality. I'm sure it does. Is it enough to make me justify spending the money on it when I have a perfectly acceptable first pressing and it doesn't offer me anything more than just a little bit better sound quality? My personal opinion, no. I'm going to stick with my original. So I hope that sheds a little bit of light on, the difference between an original, a reissue, and a remaster, and gives you some insight, at least into my thought process. Doesn't mean that's right for everybody. There are a lot of people who might think I'm nuts and they want to buy the newest repress of everything so that it is the best. And more power to you. That's just my thoughts on the topic. The bottom line is, for me, I'll go with an original whenever possible. If I can find one that's in good condition, that has no playing problems. If I can't find that, I'll pick up a reissue or a remaster. Or I'll get a reissue and a remaster, even if I have the original, if the reissue or remaster has extra goodies in it. That's my thoughts. Hope you found it somewhat interesting. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you again very soon with a new video. Catch you guys on the flip side.